recording. So there we go.
Okay, so we're good to go. Right. Okay, so we'll get started. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm really pleased to be sharing this practice with you. I'm sure many of you have come across this in the past. And yes, it's something that has been a game changer for me, especially in regards to meditation and developing qualities on the path. So initially I'm going to talk to you about loving kindness and compassion in the Buddhist context. So obviously this comes up in many different spiritual practices, but I'm going to talk to you about the mechanics of it and how it works with regards to enlightenment. So within the Buddhist context, we need to really understand what enlightenment is before we can place loving kindness in the path. So to a Buddhist, enlightenment is total freedom from suffering. So this is complete cessation of any feelings of hate, anger, lust, greed, aversion, and craving. These feelings no longer arise. So it's permanent eradication of these feelings. So this is the idea of freedom from suffering. It comes about through being able to see the nature of Maya, the nature of reality. So how this whole illusion is made up down to the tiniest quantum level, if you like. So you're able to see how the mind works with a magnifying glass. So you're able to see it so much so that this world no longer appears like a solid, illusory, three-dimensional thing. It becomes a process of arising and passing phenomena. So obviously this is something that is quite difficult to describe and only really can be experienced. But until we experience it, we need to cultivate all the attitudes, all the mind, in order for this enlightenment experience to unfold. Okay, so the idea that we see everything as separate or three-dimensional in the Buddhist concept is kind of, we call this ignorance. Now, ignorance isn't the lack of knowledge or not having the intellectual knowledge or understanding concepts. Ignorance is like a cloud that rests over your vision of seeing. So it prevents clear seeing, prevents seeing the nature of reality as it really is. So the idea is we're to remove this ignorance through practice first. So I'm going to talk to you about loving kindness, first of all, in the early Theravada texts. So this is very much about preparation and cultivation of the right mind so that we can pierce the nature of reality, see exactly as it should be. Okay, so within the early tradition, this comes from Sutrayana, or the Pali canon. So the three baskets, as it's otherwise known as. This is the Nikayas, the second book, which a lot of the Buddha's teachings come from. So a lot of these teachings, now the two paths, the two very important meditation practices that accumulate to enlightenment is the jhana path, or the calm abiding, or samatha traditions. This is about concentration. This is about refining the mind and its steadiness and its application of one pointed focus so that it is like a razor blade. This is samadhi, the path of samadhi. Now, jhanas or samadhi in and of themselves don't lead to enlightenment. However, they support the process of vipassana, or wisdom. Once the mind is really malleable, once the mind is really focused, one is able to drop in and see the nature of reality. It's very hard to do this if the mind is all over the place. So the second path, really important in the Buddhist practice, is panna, or wisdom, or insight. Some of you might have heard this as vipassana. Now, vipassana is insight, so looking at the nature of reality. So with jhana, we are just stilling the mind, stilling the fluctuations, jhana, samatha, calm abiding, they're all the same practices. That's, how would you say, a kind of focusing so much that no negative thoughts come in. All thoughts are in the background. Insight, we are no longer stopping the thoughts. They're arising and we're having a really good look at them. But because we have such good concentration, you can really see the nature of these thoughts. Okay, so again, this is just context to seeing how loving kindness and compassion is very important in culminating these kinds of states. So the jhanic states would be, in the early Buddhist canon, they talk about 4 jhanic states. And these are very intense, very profound absorptions. So they start with an overwhelming kind of piti, joy, rapture. It's so ecstatic that it's physical. So it's like a rapture that floods the body. It's complete bliss. And sometimes people describe this as too much, quite an intense sensation. I recently did some research talking to long-term meditators who achieved these jhanas, and they all described the same sensations, which were an overwhelming, like a kind of physical orgasmic feeling, not sexual. So there's no desire in these states of absorption. There's no thought in these states of absorption, although this is arguable between different sects of Buddhism. We won't go into that now. And there are 4 of these states, so they get less gross. As you move to the 2nd jhana, they become more subtle, more infused in the body, more peaceful, more gentle. The 3rd jhana, even more peaceful. The 4th jhana is a state of equanimity, perfect, rock-like, solid steadiness. The body, people say that the breath stops. I don't know if they've scientifically proved this yet, but this is what the experience is. There's no breathing anymore. The body becomes like a rock rooted at the bottom of the ocean. There's no wavering, no thought, no emotion, equanimous, absolutely purely still, but it's awake. And this is where wisdom then arises. Okay, so these are very high advanced states. And of course, we think, okay, great, but how do we get there? They're not something that, well, maybe some people experience them overnight, but they're something which do take cultivation and practice. So where does loving kindness come into this? Okay, so as we start with concentration or jhana practices or samatha practices, we start by placing the attention on something quite physical, so the body, feelings and sensations in the body. Once we are able to steady the mind so it's able to concentrate long enough on these sensations in the body, then we apply it to the breath. Once we're able to steady the breath, we start moving to more abstract, more subtle things. This is when we start to apply our attention to cultivating 4, they're called Brahma Viharas, or abodes of Brahma. Okay, so these are actually, the Brahma Viharas are older than Buddhism. They are in the Upanishads. They mark a very significant change. Before in India, it was very ritualistic, Vedic ritual, and then it starts to turn into virtue. We start to cultivate virtue. Okay, so all these practices, they support each other. So we, all the while, as I'm describing to you this as though it's a kind of linear thing. However, we want to cultivate all of these things almost simultaneously because they support each other. So these 4 abodes of Brahma, they are loving kindness, compassion, empathy, equanimity. Okay, so these are feelings or attitudes. These attitudes are so subtle and fine that they allow a steadier mind. They allow clearer insight. When we have feelings of hate or ill will or kind of these negative feelings, there's a gravity in the body, there's a gravity in the mind, and the mind is disturbed. So in order to create a clear, balanced mind, these feelings, loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy, and equanimity supports focus and concentration. So I'm just going to quickly describe what these mean in the Buddhist context. So loving kindness or benevolence, otherwise known as metta, it's a sense of warm feelings to others. So this warmth, it's the same kind of warmth that you might feel towards your child when they're sleeping, this kind of real overflowing feeling of metta or genuine unselfish kindness. And it's not sexual and it's not bound up in conditions either. So it's not, I like you if you do this. So it's quite independent from everything. Compassion in the Buddhist context is the feeling, it's a feeling of care for others, and a wish that they are free from suffering. So when you see someone suffering, it's like a genuine feeling that you wish for them to be out of their suffering. And it's very different from pity. It's not, oh, you poor thing, I'm okay. It's you're wholeheartedly imbued in this, I really want you out of your pain. I really want you to be free of your pain. Empathetic joy or mudita, this is joy at someone else's success. So this is, the Buddhists often relate this to the kind of joy you might get with your son and daughter's success. So this is utterly selfless. You're happy for other people when they are happy. And this is something that wells up from inside and it spills over. The fourth Brahma Vihara is equanimity or upekkha. So this is really important in the Buddhist practice. It's helps the mind not become attached or feel aversion. So these are the root causes of suffering in Buddhism: attachment, wanting something, and feeling an aversion towards it. These arise in extreme or subtle ways. Okay, so this is not feeling sad or happy towards someone. It's not indifference. It's kind of, the Buddhists describe it as like a mother watching a child when the child is absorbed in play. Okay, so it's a pleasant feeling, but it's without conditions. It's without emotional reaction. Okay, so loving kindness in the Theravada tradition, there's a famous story of the Buddha, and Buddha's cousin Devadatta has a vendetta against the Buddha, and he sends a wild elephant out to kill the Buddha. And the Buddha's heart of compassion or deep loving kindness subdues the elephant, and the elephant doesn't kill the Buddha. And this story is comes up a lot in the Thai forest tradition, actually, as we often hear about Thai monks. They go out into the forest to meditate. It's often the way with the Shramana tradition. You go and find somewhere secluded to do your practice, and there's often snakes, wild animals, wild harmful animals. Many reports of these harmful animals being subdued by the meditators practicing loving kindness. So the idea, I mean, this is a kind of siddhi, I suppose you could say, and it comes up a lot in many yogic traditions in India. The idea is when your heart spills over with a genuine non-harmfulness, a genuine notion of peacefulness, everyone around you feels peaceful too. There's no negative or bad intent coming out. Okay, so in the Pali Canon, they describe metta, or the benefits of metta, as you can sleep easily with no evil dreams. This is what the Pali Canon says. One is dear to human beings and dear to non-human beings. So this means you are loved by all sentient beings. So this in the Buddhist ideology, they include devas, all kinds of, how do you say, multi-dimensional beings as a sentient being as well. So that's what they talk about by non-human beings, as well as animals and all other creatures. So it says neither fire, poison, nor weapons can touch one as well. One's mind gains concentration quickly. Now this is important. With this metta, you're able to focus very easily. It's a very light mind. So If the mind is dull and contracting, it can't concentrate in the kind of way where a jhana can arise. So the loving kindness acts as a support. It's an attitude that imbues your meditative focus. So the Pali Canon, back to the Pali Canon, it says your complexion becomes bright. And when you die, you're not confused. And if you've perfected this meditation, you head for a Brahma world. So recent studies have also found, I mean, there's a lot of research still to go into this, but it's also found this loving kindness meditation to reduce anger and pain, physical pain in the Pali, in Buddhist practice. Mind and body are very, very closely linked. So what you think affects the body. This is called causality. We'll go into this a little bit in a moment. Okay, God, running out of time quickly. We will go through this quickly so we can get on with the practice. In later Mahayana traditions, we come across the 10 perfections. So earlier I said in the Theravada tradition, loving kindness does not lead to enlightenment in and of itself. However, in the Mahayana tradition, these are later on, they talk about the 10 perfections, the 10 paramitas, or sometimes the 6 paramitas. Now, these are attitudes, dana, shila, nekama, pana, vidya, kanti, satya, aditana, metta, upekkha. So these are generosity, virtue, renunciation, transcendental wisdom, energy, patience, truthfulness, determination, loving kindness, and equanimity. So in Buddhism, a very important sutra, a very important notion is that of dependent origination. One thought affects another thought, affects another thought, a feeling, and then a physical sensation. So everything is linked. Everything colors something else. So this is all within the self. This is all the mind. So really it's the idea of causality. Okay, when you think something, this is going to affect another thought. When you look at something, a thought will arise in response to what you were looking at. These create ingrained notions or samskaras, behavior patterns. These can be positive behavior patterns or negative behavior patterns. So what we want to do is we want to train the mind. Now, the mind is one of the most malleable things. So to a Buddhist, all of this is mind, everything is mind. The illusion of samsara, everything is all mind. But what we must do is start with our own thoughts. And we can do that by applying certain focused meditation ideas. Okay, so let's look. So causality within this practice. Now there's an order. When we do our loving kindness practice, there is a really important order, how these thoughts and feelings unfold. So we need to, the Buddhist monks were great psychologists, or the Buddha, should I say, was an amazing psychiatrist, an amazing psychologist. He understood how the human mind worked. So he created these meditation techniques that would help. So loving kindness comes before compassion. So if we can cultivate loving kindness, then compassion flows easily. Okay, so we apply this intention. So loving kindness, so we do this practice for a sense of care for other people. We want people to be happy. So this is the intention. Now remember, I was talking about causality. When we start a practice with a positive intention, everything else unfolds nicely. This is the root. Okay, so if we have the correct intention, your mind will unfold in a positive manner. So once we are able to develop loving kindness, compassion flows easily. Once compassion flows easily, so in order to develop in compassion, we must also have equanimity. This is why the stages developing loving kindness is important. So I'm just checking the time. I realize, gosh, we're running out. Okay, so I will quickly get on to why we practice this loving kindness as an antidote. So this is really an antidote to ill will, an antidote to anger. It's also used in preparation for Vipassana and Samatha. So if you have the kind of mind which is introspective, which thinks or has a tendency to melancholy or depression, Vipassana on its own might not be so helpful, because you can really sink in to this kind of, how do you say, introspection, which isn't a light mind, which isn't a lifted, joyful, jhanic mind. So we practice loving kindness again to lift the mind, to support it. Again, with concentration, samatha practice, if we focus our mind too much, if we're doing samadhi practices, one-pointed concentration practices, without the lightness of loving kindness, we can create tension. It's like a trying. It becomes like a kind of a need or a desperation. I mean, maybe that's a strong word, but there's subtle elements of impatience that can arise. Mindfulness, practicing mindfulness. We can get detached or even catatonic sometimes with just watching the arising and passing. So again, the loving kindness supports this. Okay, so that was just an overview. The path itself, we really need to start from the beginning. I mean, a lot of the Mahayana texts, they talk about this rigpa, this open awareness, but this is really advanced states. These are for enlightened bodhisattvas. So really we want to generate the kind of loving kindness that overflows from the heart spontaneously and naturally. Now, this is, I mean, ideally, this is wonderful, but the reality is, you know, we've been hurt, we've had rejection, we've had a lifetime of hard feelings, of difficult situations that have sometimes made us unable for this genuine, spontaneous, loving kindness to arise. It can be a hard life. So we need to heal. We need to use this practice as a kind of a healing balm first. Now, something that a lot of Eastern practitioners say about the West is that the Westerners find it hard to do this self-practice because they think it's selfish. It isn't. What we're trying to do is create a healthy ego before we dissolve the ego. So we need confidence to walk the path. We need to feel that we're worthy of liberation, of happiness, of joy. So this is different from self-cherishing, okay? So we're not it's not about I'm better than everyone else and I need more support. It's just about saying you're just as worthy as everyone else for enlightenment. And this is the ultimate kind of attitude, really. Okay, so we need a confident ego before we can dissolve the ego, a healthy ego. Okay, so we start by this metta feeling on the self. There's stages we work towards, thinking of wishing loving kindness for the self. Then we think of someone who we have a lot of, how do you say, affection for, respect for. Now, this has to be someone that you don't have sexual desire for, because we don't want thoughts of attraction to come in. These are instructions by the Visuddhimagga. The Visuddhimagga is a kind of textbook for Theravadan monks. And also think of someone who is alive. Apparently cultivating metta bhavana doesn't really come into fruition if the person you're thinking of is dead. So after you send feelings of loving kindness to someone else, you think of someone you have mutual feelings for. Okay, so someone that you neither like nor dislike, someone you see every day but you don't really know very well. So this is a neutral person. Then you think of someone who you have difficulty with, someone who you feel like causes you a bit of anxiety, causes you a bit of problems, causes you a bit of, how do you say, yeah, discomfort, someone you dislike. Now, initially, find or think of someone that it doesn't bring up a lot of anger. So someone maybe close to neutral. So the reason they say this is because initially it can be very exhausting when you're training the mind to think of someone and reverse those feelings. It takes up a lot of energy in the mind. So we start gradually. You move through these people gradually and slowly. Eventually, you start to increase the amount of people when you think of someone you love, when you think of mutual feelings, and when you think of someone you have difficulty with. So this starts to increase. Eventually, once this metta starts to flow, you are able to send your love. This is to the third group of people, someone you have difficulty with, to murderers, rapists, psychopathic CEOs, all of that. So before we do this, there has to be a spontaneous arousal. And this is something we cultivate over time. It does take time. And for some people, it might take longer than for others, but that doesn't matter. What does matter is the path. Okay, so that was a lot of talking. Apologies. I thought that was going to be a lot quicker, but there's a lot to say about putting loving kindness in the correct context. So the order, like I said, is important. By being able to generate loving kindness for all beings is really important. It takes it away. You're training the mind to not have conditional loving feelings. These feelings want to arise for all beings, for all people. So naturally, after a while of practicing this, when someone comes to mind, a thought, a loving kindness thought or feeling will arise. Okay, right. So we will get into the practice. First of all, before we start, let's just think of someone who you are going to place as your person who you have respect for or love for, where it's easy to feel this kindness arise. And then think of someone who you're going to use for your mutual feeling person, and then think of someone who you're going to use as your difficulty person, someone who you have difficulty with. Okay, so what we're going to do when we start our practice is we need to prepare. And we want the body to be comfortable and light. We want the chest to be lifted. So when we sit in a meditation, it's like placing yourself in a physical mudra. So your spine wants to be as tall and as comfortable as it possibly can. Your chest wants to be lifted so that your breathing can happen naturally, easily. The head wants to be rested on top of the spine. And the eyes want to be soft and the jaw relaxed. So allow yourself to get comfortable. And before we go into the Metta Bhavana practice, the attitudes of loving kindness, we want to establish concentration. So we'll do a little bit of mindfulness of body and mindfulness of breathing now. It's really important that we cultivate this attention first, because sometimes we start to get restless. We want all the love, the Metta Bhavana to arise, and it's exactly these energies that we need to settle in order to allow ourselves, in order to give ourselves fully to the compassion, to the arousal of loving kindness. Okay, so what is important is that we apply ourselves fully to this practice. The outcome will depend on your sincerity and intention. Okay, so establishing yourself on the mat. So apologies to people who are practiced in this. I'm going to do quite a guided meditation for those who are just beginning. You can turn the volume down if you want this voice to be in the background. Establishing the body on the floor. feeling the head and all the sensations in the head and the ears, softening the jaw, all the muscles around the face, the eyes are soft, feeling the sensations in the body, the neck, the arms, and the chest. Allowing the sensations to rise and fall, feeling the feelings, ignoring the outside world and applying your attention to body sensations. Feeling the belly and the hips, the thighs, the knees and the calves. Feel the gravity of your body resting on the floor. The feet. Feel the whole body. So applying your attention without judgment to all the feelings, whether it's pain or pleasure, just watching without judgment. The eyes are soft, feeling the spine nice and tall. Applying the attention again and again back to the sensations in the body. Now start to feel the breath moving in through the nostrils, through the throat, into the lungs. Feeling the chest expanding, contracting. Applying your attention to the experience. Just the experience happening in your body. Feeling every part without judgment. Intimately experiencing the breath moving in, lungs expanding, how the muscles move with the lungs expanding, feelings that arise and pass, sensations moving around the body. The mind starts to wander, take a deep breath, bringing you back to the present moment. Bringing your mind's attention to the breath. Become aware of the stillness settling into your mind and your body. Allow the breath to be easeful and steady. Now we're going to apply our attention to your whole being, whole self. We're going to arouse the thoughts of loving kindness, of metta. So first start to feel the area of the heart. Feel the sensations in the heart area. You can place your hand over your heart to stimulate these feelings. So the physical feelings arising in your heart. So we're going to bring the words, may I be well, may I be happy, into our minds. Inhaling, may I be well. Exhaling, may I be happy. With sincerity, a real wish for being well. Feel this in the heart area. May I be well, may I be happy. With care and attention to the self. Thinking of your physical body. There's pain. Maybe if you're unwell, send that wish to your physical body. May I be well. May this body be happy. Again, using the breath to bring yourself into the present moment. Applying this thought to your body. Without judgment. And with compassion, apply the thought, may I be free from suffering. Maybe you can think of a reason without going into it too much, why you may be suffering at the present moment. It might be small, it might be large. And ask, sincere wish to be free from this suffering. May I be free from this suffering. Maintaining focus, stillness in the body. May I be well. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering. If you're visual, you can visualize a light, a golden light in the heart. If you're physical, you can feel the sensations in the heart. Feeling of metta, loving kindness, kind to the self. So now we're going to apply our attention to someone we respect and love, someone we hold with high regard, someone who it's easy to feel affection towards. Now this can be, if no one comes to mind, you can think of a pet even. You want to generate feelings of loving kindness. It could be anything, they must be alive. See that person smiling, see that person happy, visualize them in your mind's eye. Remember, soften the eyes, soften the face. Hold the body upright. Attention, awareness. Again, sending metta. May you be well. May you be happy. Send these thoughts to that person. May you be well. May you be happy. Loving kindness. Again, if the attention is wandering, if the mind is wandering, take a deep breath. Refocus. If this is hard to do, if you're in lots of pain right now, go back to the loving kindness on the self. Don't move on until you feel comfortable to. Inhaling, may you be well. Exhaling, may you be happy. Feeling the sensations in the heart. The body is awake, the body is alert. Sending feelings of metta. If this is hard, just send thoughts. Now think of this person. Maybe they have suffering in their life. Think of this person, how they might be suffering, and send them thoughts of compassion. May you be free from your suffering. May you be free from your suffering. Being present, feeling the breathing, feeling body sensation. May you be well, may you be happy, may you be free from suffering. Soften the jaw, soften the eyes, lift the body. Again, feeling the heart area. Visualize heart like a glowing flame which you are nurturing with your kind attention, gentle awareness. Even if it's subtle, just tend to it patiently, being aware of the stillness in the body, steady breath. Feeling the whole being. Sending metta. Now think of someone who you see every day, maybe a bus driver, shopkeeper, someone whose face you recognize, whose face you know, yet you don't know them very well. This is the neutral person. Someone we feel neither attraction nor aversion to. See their face in your mind's eye. Be aware of them. See them contented. See them happy. Again, sending metta. May you be happy. May you be well. Genuine wish for their happiness, for their wellness, physical, mental, emotional. Again, if this is hard, you can go back to loving kindness on the self and generate metta towards the self. Otherwise, think of the person. May you be well. May you be happy. Again, lifting the body, feeling the breath, softening the eyes, the jaw. Sometimes it helps to put a subtle smile on the face. This can lift the mind. Neutral person. May you be well, may you be happy. Ground this feeling into the body by feeling body, feeling breath. Being in the moment. May you be well, may you be happy. Now bringing in compassion. Without going into detail, think about how this person may be suffering in their life. Let's see, we won't know. Send them feelings of compassion. May you be free from suffering. Applying the mind. Focusing the attention. Visualizing their face. Feel the sensations in the heart. Bringing thoughts to the mind. feelings of metta. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering, to the neutral person. Keep applying your attention to this person. Doesn't matter if it wanders, keep going back. It's the breath to bring your attention back to the present moment. And lastly, for this session, applying the mind, thinking of someone who we maybe have difficulty with, not too much to start with. Visualize them happy. If this is too much, you can go back to the neutral person. Again, if the neutral person is difficult, then go back to the self. It's really important we establish a firm foundation of loving kindness. In retreat, we would work on the self for a couple of days. So the third person, loving kindness to someone who we have difficulty with. Visualize their face, visualize them happy. Feel the heart area. See this person in your mind's eye. Send them metta. May you be well in your body. May you be happy. Remembering this practice is like a protection for the mind, cultivating heroic, loving kindness and compassion, especially with the difficult person. It can help to think of this person as a child. Maybe some behavior as a result of their own suffering. See them as an innocent child, maybe not getting what they need with regards to love or attention, and have compassion. Wish them to be free of their suffering. See them, visualize them, send them good wishes. Keep applying the mind back to the object of concentration. See this person's face, feel the heart area. Remember the breath if the mind becomes dull. Lift the body, soften the eyes. Remember that slight smile, Buddha smile, can help. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. Again, if this is difficult, you can go back to loving kindness to the self, to the person you respect or to the neutral person. Just be patient with the practice. A wish for people to be free of suffering, a wish for them to be well in their bodies, in their minds, a wish for their lives to go smoothly, easily. Feel this in the heart area. So bringing our attention back to the breath, and the feelings in the body, re-establishing steady concentration, stillness. Being absolutely aware of every sensation in the body. Kindness, patience. Make a thought of dedication so that any merit accumulated in this practice, send that merit to people who might need it, people who are suffering. Visualize people who might be suffering and send the merit to them, cultivating altruistic intentions. So altruism is the nature of loving kindness and compassion. Sending metta. Now, coming to the end of our session, traditionally this practice extends by adding more and more people to your 3 groups, and then visualizing a whole area where you send your metta to, allowing this loving kindness to expand from your town, city, country, across oceans, cultivating this patiently so that it's spontaneous and genuine. So it's really important that the metta is overflowing from the self. If we strain, it becomes exhausting. So bringing your awareness back into the room, bringing your attention to the world around you. Now out of meditation, carrying the metta in the heart. Lovely. Good work, everyone. So, such a short session to be practicing metta, it's such a huge subject. If there are any questions, then please do feel free to ask, where Effie has earlier pointed to in the chat. And I'm happy to answer any of them. There's a lot of information in the beginning, but it's important to put it into context so that we are applying ourselves in the right way, so that our efforts culminate eventually into enlightenment, to full awakening. It's lovely to practice metta with everyone. So this is a healing balm. It's something that can really help when times are difficult, when times are hard. And if you are a experienced meditator, it can help lift your mind. It can help sharpen your focus. And it can help with concentration and insight. So we have a question. So the difference between, could you recap the difference between Vipassana and other sides of the practice? Okay, so in early Buddhism, so this is the Buddhism taught by the Buddha. This is in the Pali Canon. Remembering later on, we have Vajrayana Buddhism, that's Tibetan Buddhism that the Dalai Lama practices. That's incorporating a lot of Tantra into the practice as well. Tantra yoga, things like this. Early Buddhism, Vipassana and Samatha. Vipassana is insight, so that's focusing, scanning the body. Goenka, perfect example, scanning the body, looking, observing sensations. We're not controlling the thoughts are arising and we're examining them. Concentration, samatha practice is the other parallel to Vipassana, and that's practices where you might focus your attention on the breath, just the breath, or focusing the attention on body sensations. These practices are to calm the mind, still the mind. It temporarily subdues any thoughts. So thoughts, emotions, feelings, they are at bay. So you can enter very, very deep states of samadhi in samatha practice. However, when you come out of samadhi or this concentration, then these thoughts come flooding back. The dependent origination starts happening again, and we get drawn into samsara. So these two practices support each other. So again, samatha is focusing the attention on one point. You can use a rock to gaze at. You can use a flame. You can use a symbol. These are all samatha practices. In the Vishuddhimagga, which is a Theravadan text, they use particular objects of concentration to get rid of certain defilements. So defilements might be, for a monk, sexual attraction. So to overcome desire, they would focus on the fingernails, hair follicles, bile, the content of your guts, things like this. So to overcome the attractiveness of a physical body, you're just trying to bring your attention to what is. There'd be other objects of metta bhavana would be a samatha practice. So the loving kindness we just did, this is a concentration practice. This is a samatha practice. It will sharpen the mind. It's a more subtle object of awareness. It's not a physical object like the breath or the body. But again, this sharpens the mind, sharpens concentration. I hope that helps. I mean, it's huge, the discussions between samatha and vipassana. Thank you for lovely comments. There's one question: is this practice linked with any movement at all? Yes, you can. Once you establish the loving kindness, once you genuinely feel it overflowing from the heart, then it's a good practice to do it while walking. So we want to grow accustomed to this practice in all situations. So eventually it's just spontaneous and naturally arising. It's when we're sitting still, it's easier to apply concentration. Mind has a tendency to wander. So by sitting still, by establishing steadiness in breath, in body, it's easier to think of a person, to apply thought of loving kindness to that person. Once this is established, then we start doing walking meditations with it. So you're walking whilst thinking of the self, the person you have reverence for, the neutral person, and the person you have difficulty with. So the idea becomes just your first thought when you think of someone. You're training the mind. Okay, any questions? So yeah, please keep practicing. It does grow, I promise you. Sometimes in the beginning, I remember when I started, I felt really disheartened because I couldn't feel anything in my heart area. I was, oh, what's wrong with me? But it grows, and it depends on the day as well. So this is really important to keep going, to keep practicing. Don't give up. You will cultivate this. It does arise. This is a natural state of mind. So as we spoke about earlier, for Hinayana practices, the Mahayana practices, the Bodhisattvas, once they've eradicated all the negative or the suffering mind permanently, that's what's left: loving kindness, metta, endless compassion, boundless love. This just floods out. You hear stories of bodhisattvas, their heart quivering with compassion for people suffering on earth, and it just flows, spontaneously spills out. This is a real thing, can be acquired. It takes patience and diligence. But yes, it can be done. Milarepa is a perfect example. He was a murderer and became a great bodhisattva. So anyone, the wonderful thing about Buddhism. So the question, will be doing any more practices or any more talks? Hopefully, yes. I'll be going into more detail into another talk on Vipassana and Samatha. So really looking at early Buddhist practices. As well as thinking of doing a talk on Japanese Buddhist Tantra as well, coming up. Okay. Oh, I forgot to say, this is maybe I can share a link with everyone. I've been watching this wonderful monk do fantastic guided meditations in Metta Bhavana. I really recommend his website. It's called peacebeyondsuffering.org. I can type it here. And you can listen to this whenever you want. So this monk is truly dedicated to the practice. He works at it 4 hours every day, apparently, but really beautiful metta practice he gives. So, oh, hang on. So I've just sent the website of this lovely monk. Okay, thanks everyone. I hope this helps with your day, your mind, and I hope it's something that you continue to practice. We have another question. So it's for starting to any reading about this. I've taken, as a beginner, I've taken a lot of this from Buddhist texts. So I've been looking at the canon, the Visuddhimagga, and a lot of the Prajnaparamita, in terms of looking at it from a beginner's perspective. I think this website, www.peacebeyondsuffering.org, which I've posted in the chat, is really fantastic. It really does sum it up in a very practical way for people if you want to go into this practice even further, from the perspective of a Theravadan monk. So bearing in mind, Buddhism really does accumulate into the same outcome, but there's lots and lots of different practices, different sects. It spans over 2,500 years. So a lot of culture has changed. So it does change the practice somewhat, but the outcome, the main themes, the doctrines, pretty much the same. Okay. Thanks so much for coming. Watch this space for more talks and more guided meditations. I have a class on Thursday. We apply a lot of Buddhist meditation practices to yoga as well. So using Patanjali Yoga Sutra and Buddhism to acquire more samatha type practices and prepare the body for meditation. So Patanjali Yoga Sutra and Buddhism cross over quite a lot. There's a lot of similarities. So I like to use both of these practices. So Thursdays, 11:15, about balance. Okay, that's great. Thanks everyone. I'm going to sign out. Have a wonderful day.